On May 22nd, 2020, a day that began like any other, Pakistan International Airlines Flight 8303 took off from Allama Iqbal International Airport in Lahore, Pakistan. The airport, bustling with activity, saw the aircraft gracefully ascend into the sky. Its destination, Jinnah International Airport in Karachi, a journey that should have been routine and uneventful. The Airbus A320 carried 91 passengers and 8 crew members, all eager to reach their destination. Among them were families, business travelers, and individuals returning home. The flight was scheduled to arrive in Karachi by early afternoon, a time when the city is usually bathed in warm sunlight. Families awaited the arrival of their loved ones, their hearts filled with anticipation and joy. Children clutched signs and parents checked their watches, counting down the minutes. Little did anyone know tragedy was about to strike. The skies, which had been clear, began to show signs of an impending storm. The initial leg of the journey proceeded without incident. The plane soared smoothly, cutting through the air with ease. The weather was clear, and the flight crew communicated routinely with air traffic control. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. Passengers settled into their seats, some reading, others listening to music, all anticipating a smooth journey. Conversations flowed, and the cabin was filled with a sense of calm. However, as the plane approached Karachi, a routine flight transformed into a terrifying ordeal. The cityscape of Karachi came into view, but something was amiss. The landing gear, crucial for a safe arrival, had malfunctioned. The crew, trained for such emergencies, sprang into action, trying to troubleshoot the issue. In the cockpit, the pilots communicated with air traffic control, their voices steady but laced with urgency. They were determined to land the plane safely. Inside the cabin, passengers began to sense that something was wrong. Anxiety spread, and some held hands, seeking comfort in each other. On the ground, emergency vehicles were put on standby, ready to respond to any situation. The airport staff prepared for the worst, hoping for the best. The plane made its first attempt to land, but the malfunctioning landing gear caused it to skid. Smoke billowed from the wheels, and the aircraft lifted off again. The pilots, focused and composed, decided to circle around for another attempt. They communicated their plan to the passengers, trying to keep everyone calm. Passengers prayed, some whispered words of comfort to each other, and others clung to their seats, bracing for what was to come. As the plane made its second attempt to land, the tension was palpable. The aircraft descended and everyone held their breath. Tragically, the plane crashed, leading to a devastating loss of life. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, doing everything they could to save lives. At the airport, families who had been waiting with joy were now engulfed in grief. The news of the crash shattered their world. In the days that followed, memorial services were held. Candles were lit, flowers were laid, and the nation mourned the loss of those who had been on Flight 8303. Investigators worked tirelessly to determine the cause of the crash, piecing together the events that led to the tragedy. A tribute wall was created, adorned with photos and messages for the victims. It stood as a poignant reminder of the lives lost and the impact of the tragedy. Though the journey of Flight 8303 was cut short, the memories of those on board live on. Their legacy is a testament to the fragility of life and the enduring strength of the human spirit.
As Flight PK 8303 neared Karachi, the pilots received a warning indication in the cockpit. The landing gear, responsible for the safe touchdown of the aircraft, was not deploying properly. This malfunction triggered immediate concern for the pilots and crew. They were now facing a critical situation that required a calm and measured response. The pilots contacted air traffic control in Karachi, reporting the issue with the landing gear. They attempted to troubleshoot the problem following standard procedures and checklists. The crew worked diligently to rectify the situation, hoping to regain control of the landing gear. Despite their best efforts, the problem persisted, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the flight.
Karachi Tower, this is PK 8303. We have a landing gear issue. We are trying to troubleshoot.
We're following the checklist, but the gear isn't deploying. Requesting guidance.
We may have to circle the airport to buy some time. Please advise.
The anxiety on board is rising. We need to resolve this quickly.
Air traffic control, please clear the airspace. We need priority for an emergency landing.
The communication is becoming strained. We need immediate support.
preparing for the possibility of an emergency landing. All hands on deck.
Despite the best efforts of the pilots and air traffic control, a tragic event unfolded that would forever change the lives of many. Flight PK 8303, en route from Lahore to Karachi, tragically crashed in a residential area of Karachi known as Model Colony. The flight, which was supposed to be a routine journey, turned into a nightmare for everyone involved. The aircraft, unable to land safely due to technical difficulties, slammed into the densely populated neighborhood, causing widespread devastation. The pilots had reported issues with the landing gear and were attempting a second approach when disaster struck. The impact sent shockwaves through the community, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable chaos and destruction. Emergency response teams were quickly dispatched to the site, but the scale of the disaster was overwhelming. The crash instantly claimed the lives of 91 passengers and crew members on board. Families waiting at the airport for their loved ones were met with heartbreaking news, their hopes shattered in an instant. The impact also tragically killed 9 people on the ground, innocent residents going about their daily lives. These individuals, who had no connection to the flight, became unintended victims of this horrific accident. Homes were reduced to rubble, streets were littered with debris, and a cloud of smoke and dust hung heavy in the air. The once peaceful neighborhood was transformed into a disaster zone, with residents struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the tragedy. The crash site became a grim testament to the devastating consequences of the aviation disaster. Investigators from various agencies arrived to piece together the events that led to the crash, sifting through the wreckage for clues. The black box recorders were recovered and sent for analysis, providing crucial data that would help determine the cause of the crash. Preliminary reports suggested a combination of technical failure and human error, but a full investigation was needed to uncover the truth. In the days that followed, memorial services were held for the victims, with people lighting candles and laying flowers to honor those who lost their lives. The community came together in grief, offering support to the families affected by the tragedy. Government officials addressed the media, promising a thorough investigation and measures to prevent such incidents in the future. The crash raised serious questions about aviation safety and the need for stricter regulations. As the investigation continued, efforts to rebuild the neighborhood began. The resilience of the residents was evident as they worked together to restore their community, determined to overcome the tragedy that had befallen them. A memorial plaque was erected in Model Colony, inscribed with the names of the victims. It stands as a somber reminder of the lives lost and the impact of the crash on the community. While the scars of the disaster will remain, the community's spirit of hope and resilience shines through. The tragedy of Flight PK 8303 serves as a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of safety in aviation.
Witnesses on the ground described the horrifying moment when Flight PK 8303 crashed into their neighborhood. The scene was chaotic, with people running in every direction, trying to make sense of the disaster that had just unfolded before their eyes. They recounted the deafening roar of the engines, followed by a tremendous explosion. The sound was so loud that it shook the very foundations of the buildings nearby, causing windows to shatter and car alarms to go off. The sky filled with thick black smoke, and debris rained down from above. Pieces of the aircraft, along with personal belongings of the passengers, were scattered across the neighborhood, creating a scene of utter chaos and destruction. People rushed out of their homes in a panic, witnessing a scene of unimaginable destruction. The streets were filled with the sounds of sirens as emergency responders raced to the scene, trying to provide assistance to those in need. "It sounded like a bomb went off," said one resident, still visibly shaken from the experience. The sheer force of the impact was enough to leave a lasting impression on anyone who witnessed it. "I saw the plane coming down, and then everything went black." The witness described the moment of impact as surreal, almost like a scene from a movie, but the reality of the situation was far more terrifying. Another witness described seeing people trapped inside their homes, desperate for help. The cries for assistance could be heard echoing through the streets, adding to the sense of urgency and despair. The accounts of those who witnessed the crash paint a harrowing picture of the terror and devastation that unfolded that day. The community was left in a state of shock, grappling with the reality of the tragedy that had struck so close to home. Emergency responders worked tirelessly to control the situation, battling flames and searching for survivors amidst the wreckage. Their efforts were heroic, but the scale of the disaster made their task incredibly challenging. Families of the victims arrived at the scene, overwhelmed with grief. The loss was palpable, and the air was thick with sorrow as they tried to come to terms with the sudden and tragic loss of their loved ones. In the aftermath, the community came together, offering support and comfort to those affected. Vigils were held, and people shared stories of the victims, ensuring that their memories would not be forgotten. Investigators examined the crash site, meticulously piecing together evidence to determine the cause of the accident. Their work was crucial in understanding what went wrong and preventing future tragedies. Memorials and tributes were set up to honor those who lost their lives. The community's resilience shone through as they united in their grief, determined to support one another through the difficult times ahead. News coverage of the accident was extensive, with reporters on the scene providing updates and sharing the stories of those affected. The world watched in horror as the details of the tragedy unfolded, offering condolences and support from afar. As time passed, the community began the slow process of rebuilding. The scars of the tragedy would remain, but the spirit of resilience and unity would help them move forward, honoring the memory of those lost while striving to prevent such a disaster from happening again.